Look, I need to ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you caught yourself staring at your own reflection and couldn't look away? Now, before you click off thinking this is some self-help nonsense, stay with me, because what I'm about to share might explain why some of your relationships feel like they're always on thin ice, why people seem to drift away, why success feels hollow, even when you're winning. There's an ancient story about a guy named Narcissus who fell so hard for his own reflection that he literally couldn't leave the water's edge. He died there, staring at himself. And here's the thing that'll make your skin crawl. Modern psychology has found that this myth isn't just poetry, it's a warning. Today, we're diving into 10 signs that you might be carrying more narcissistic traits than you think. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll never look at your own behavior the same way again. Sign number 1 hits like a sledgehammer: grandiose self-image. But here's where it gets tricky. We're not talking about confidence. We're talking about something much darker. Picture this. You're in a meeting and someone presents an idea. Your first thought isn't, "That's interesting," or "How can we build on this?" Your first thought is, "I could do that better. Why didn't they ask me?" That's the Grandiosity Trap talking. It's like having a pair of invisible glasses that make everyone else look smaller while making you look larger than life. I've watched people destroy careers over this. They can't celebrate others' wins because deep down, they believe they're naturally superior. The scary part? This often starts in childhood. Maybe you were the golden child, constantly told you were special, destined for greatness. Or maybe you were ignored, and your brain created this inflated self-image as armor. Either way, grandiosity becomes your default setting. You start believing your own hype so completely that reality becomes negotiable. And here's the kicker. Grandiose narcissists often do achieve positions of power. Politicians, CEOs, celebrities. The system sometimes rewards this behavior, which only reinforces the delusion. But watch what happens in their personal relationships. They crumble. Because you can't love someone when you're convinced you're fundamentally better than them. The grandiosity that lifts you up in public becomes the weight that crushes your private world. Sign number 2 will chill you to the bone: the inability to truly empathize. Now, narcissists aren't sociopaths. They can read emotions, even manipulate them skillfully. But genuine empathy? That's like asking someone colorblind to describe a sunset. They know the words, but they've never seen the colors. I remember watching someone tell their partner about losing a job. The narcissistic partner's response? "Well, this is really going to mess up our vacation plans." Not cruelty, just complete emotional blindness. It's like their emotional radar only picks up signals that relate back to them. Think of empathy like a muscle. Most of us develop it naturally through childhood experiences, learning to read faces, to comfort others, to feel genuine concern. But for narcissists, that muscle atrophied early. Maybe because they were so focused on getting their own needs met, or because they learned that emotions were weaknesses to exploit rather than bridges to connection. The terrifying part is how good they can be at faking it. They learn the script. "I'm so sorry for your loss. That must be really hard." But behind those words is an emotional void. They're performing empathy like actors performing love scenes, convincing on the surface, empty at the core. And here's what keeps me up at night. They often don't even realize they're faking it. They genuinely believe they care because they said the right words, made the right face. But when push comes to shove, when real sacrifice is required, when someone else's pain demands something from them, they simply aren't there. The lights are on, but nobody's home. Sign number 3 runs like a virus through everything they do: pathological entitlement. This isn't about wanting good things or being ambitious. This is about believing the rules don't apply to you. I've seen it play out in the smallest moments, cutting in line because their time is more valuable, taking the last piece of cake without asking because they deserve it more, expecting special treatment not because they've earned it, but because they exist. It's like they're walking around with an invisible crown that nobody else can see. The entitlement engine runs on a simple fuel: the belief that they're inherently more important than other people. Not smarter, not harder working, not kinder, just more important by virtue of being them. And this creates a cascade of toxic behaviors. They interrupt constantly because what they have to say matters more. They break commitments without guilt because their changing priorities override everyone else's plans. They demand loyalty while offering none in return because, well, they're the star of this show, and everyone else is just supporting cast. The most insidious part? They often frame this entitlement as justice. They're not being selfish, they're finally getting what they deserve. The world has been unfair to someone so obviously superior. So when they grab more than their share, it's just balancing the cosmic scales. I've watched marriages implode over this. Partners who started out generous and giving, slowly drained by someone who takes and takes while genuinely believing they're entitled to it all. Because in the narcissist world, love isn't about reciprocity, it's about recognition. And recognition of their superiority comes with certain privileges. Sign number 4 is like watching someone slowly overdose on themselves. Constant need for admiration and attention. But here's the twisted part. It's never enough. They could be standing ovation at Carnegie Hall, and they'd be wondering why someone in the third row wasn't clapping enthusiastically enough. Attention becomes their oxygen. Without it, they suffocate. With it, they become addicted. And like any addiction, they need bigger hits to get the same high. First, it's friends complimenting their outfit. Then it's social media likes. Then it's public speaking, performing, anything that puts them center stage. I've watched people restructure their entire lives around this need. They choose careers not based on passion or talent, but on visibility. They pick fights just to be the center of attention, even if it's negative attention. They create drama, manufacture crises, anything to pull focus back to themselves. But here's the heartbreaking part. Underneath all that hunger for attention is a terrifying emptiness. They don't know who they are without the mirror of other people's admiration. Their identity is built on external validation, which means it's constantly crumbling and needs constant rebuilding. It's like being a vampire, but instead of blood, they need praise to survive. And just like vampires, they can drain the life out of everyone around them. Conversations become performances, relationships become audiences, even their children become extensions of their need for admiration, rather than people deserving love for who they are. The scariest part? They often don't realize they're doing it. They think everyone else is just as hungry for attention as they are, just not as good at getting it. Sign number 5 will make your stomach turn. They exploit relationships without conscience. Not necessarily with malicious intent, but with something almost worse: complete obliviousness to others as full human beings. They see people as functions rather than souls. You're not Sarah who loves gardening and has 2 kids and dreams of traveling to Japan. You're Sarah who can give them rides to the airport and connections in the marketing industry. Relationships become transactional, even intimate ones. I've seen them date people not for love or connection, but for what those people represent: status, access, validation. They marry up for prestige, befriend influential people for advantage, have children for the admiration that comes with being seen as a devoted parent. But here's the truly chilling part. They don't see this as manipulation because they genuinely believe they're offering something valuable in return: themselves. In their mind, being associated with them is the gift. Your opportunity to serve their needs is actually their generosity toward you. It's like being trapped in a hall of mirrors, where every reflection shows them as the hero and everyone else as grateful, supporting characters. They'll use your emotions as levers, your insecurities as entry points, your love as fuel for their ego. And when you're no longer useful, you simply cease to exist in their universe. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, you just disappear from their consideration, like deleting an app they don't use anymore. The exploitation isn't cruel, it's casual, which somehow makes it worse. Because cruelty at least acknowledges your humanity enough to want to hurt it. Exploitation just doesn't see it at all. Sign number 6 reveals the paradox that destroys them: hypersensitivity to criticism disguised as strength. Watch a narcissist receive feedback and you'll see something fascinating and terrifying. The bigger their ego, the more fragile it is. It's like they're walking around in armor made of glass. Impressive to look at, but one small rock shatters the whole thing. They can dish out criticism like it's their job, but receiving it, that threatens their entire identity. Because remember, their self-worth isn't based on achievements or growth or relationships. It's based on the belief that they're inherently superior. So any criticism isn't just feedback about a behavior or decision. It's an attack on the fundamental truth of their existence. I've watched them react to gentle suggestions like they're being physically assaulted. A boss mentioning room for improvement becomes a conspiracy against them. A partner expressing hurt feelings becomes emotional manipulation designed to tear them down. The defensive reactions are swift and brutal. Rage, blame shifting, character assassination of the critic. But here's what's happening underneath all that fury. They're terrified. Because deep down, there's often a voice whispering that maybe they're not as special as they need to believe. Maybe they're just ordinary. Maybe the criticism is true. So they have to destroy that possibility before it destroys them. They become emotional terrorists, making criticism so costly for others that people learn to just stop. Stop pointing out problems. Stop asking for change. Stop expecting accountability. And in that silence, the narcissist finds temporary peace. But it's the peace of isolation, where their inflated self-image can survive because no one dares challenge it anymore. Sign number 7 hides behind masks and manipulation, inability to show genuine vulnerability. Narcissists are like emotional Fort Knox. Everything valuable is locked away where no one can touch it, steal it, or even see it clearly. But unlike Fort Knox, they're not protecting gold, they're protecting fear. Fear of being ordinary, fear of being rejected for who they really are instead of who they pretend to be. Real vulnerability requires something narcissists can't afford: the possibility of being wrong, being flawed, being human. So instead, they perform vulnerability. They'll share carefully curated weaknesses that actually make them look better. I care too much. I'm too generous. I work too hard. These aren't vulnerabilities. They're humble brags wrapped in the language of openness. True vulnerability means admitting mistakes without excuses, asking for help without feeling diminished, saying "I don't know" without it threatening your identity. It means letting people see you without the armor, without the performance, without the constant management of your image. But for narcissists, that kind of exposure feels like death. Because what if people see the real them and walk away? What if underneath all the grandiosity is just a person? A flawed, uncertain, sometimes struggling person, like everyone else. So they build walls disguised as windows. They share drama instead of depth. They'll tell you about their terrible childhood, their unfair boss, their crazy ex, but always as the victim, always as the wronged party, never as someone who contributed to their own pain. And here's the tragedy. This inability to be truly vulnerable is what kills their deepest relationships. Because love requires knowing and being known. But you can't know someone who won't let you see them. And they can't love you back because they're too busy managing your perception of them to actually experience you as a separate person deserving of genuine care. Sign number 8 operates like a force field around their ego. Complete inability to take responsibility. Watch a narcissist navigate conflict, and you'll see mental gymnastics that would win Olympic gold. They're not wrong. They're misunderstood. They're not hurtful. You're too sensitive. They didn't fail. The system was rigged against them. It's like they have a built-in deflector shield that bounces accountability away from them and onto anyone within range. I've seen them turn their cheating into their partner's fault for not meeting their needs, their work failures into their boss's jealousy, their children's problems into the school's incompetence. Every negative outcome must have an external cause, because the alternative, that they contributed to their own problems, would crack their foundational belief in their own superiority. The mental contortions they perform are actually impressive. They can take any situation and somehow emerge as either the hero or the victim, but never the cause. It's like watching someone play chess while insisting they're not responsible for any of their moves. And here's what makes it worse. They're often smart enough to make their deflections sound reasonable. They'll acknowledge tiny, insignificant faults while burying the major ones under elaborate justifications. Yes, maybe I should have texted you, but you know how busy I get when I'm working on important projects. Unlike some people. See that? They admitted fault for about half a second before turning it into a subtle attack on your productivity. This inability to take responsibility slowly poisons everything around them. Projects fail because no one can address real problems. Relationships crumble because issues never get resolved, just reassigned. and they remain locked in patterns of behavior that hurt themselves and others because change requires admitting there's something that needs changing. Sign number 9 burns like acid in their chest. Deep, consuming envy, paired with the belief that others envy them. It's a double-edged sword that cuts them from both sides. They can't stand seeing others succeed, be happy, or receive attention, but they also live in constant paranoia that everyone else is plotting against them out of jealousy. The envy isn't just disappointment at missing out. It's rage at the universe for giving someone else what rightfully belongs to them. When a colleague gets promoted, they don't just feel passed over. They feel robbed. When a friend gets married, they don't just feel lonely. They feel cheated out of the happiness they deserve more. But here's the twist that makes it truly toxic. They simultaneously believe that everyone else envies them. Your success isn't your achievement. It's your attempt to compete with their obvious superiority. Your happiness isn't genuine. It's performance designed to make them feel bad. Your good fortune isn't luck or hard work. It's evidence that life is unfair to someone as special as them. This creates a poisonous cycle. They resent your wins while believing you resent theirs. They sabotage your success while protecting themselves from your imagined sabotage. Every relationship becomes a competition they're convinced the other person started. I've watched them destroy friendships by constantly one-upping, minimizing others' achievements, or simply withdrawing coldness whenever someone else shines. They can't celebrate anyone else because in their zero-sum world, your joy somehow diminishes theirs. And they can't accept genuine congratulations because they're convinced it's secretly sarcastic or manipulative. The envy engine runs on the fuel of comparison, but it only knows how to compare in ways that either elevate them or diminish others. There's no setting for simple appreciation, for happiness without hierarchy, for love without scorekeeping. Sign number 10 might be the most dangerous of all: superficial charm that masks emotional emptiness. This is where narcissists become truly dangerous because they can be absolutely magnetic when they want something from you. I'm talking about charm that feels almost supernatural in its intensity. They make you feel like the most important person in the room, like they truly see you in a way no one else ever has. It's intoxicating. And it's calculated. Not necessarily consciously calculated, but their brains have learned that charm opens doors, disarms defenses, and gets them what they need. They become emotional chameleons, mirroring your interests, your energy, your values back to you in a way that feels like perfect compatibility. But here's the terrifying part. There's nothing real underneath. They're not connecting with you. They're performing connection. They're not falling for you. They're falling for the validation you provide. The charm is a fishing lure, beautiful and enticing, but hard and cold beneath the surface. And just like fishing, once they've hooked you, the lure serves its purpose and gets put away. That magical person who made you feel so special, they disappear, replaced by someone who barely seems to notice you exist unless they need something. The charm phase, love bombing, some experts call it, becomes a cruel reference point. You know they can be amazing. You've seen it. You've felt it. So when they become cold, demanding, or cruel, you blame yourself. Maybe you're not being charming enough anymore. Maybe you need to earn back that magical attention they showed you before. But that's chasing a ghost. The charming person was never real. They were just a tool in the narcissist unconscious toolkit for getting their needs met. And once they have you hooked emotionally, financially, legally, or socially, the tool goes back in the box until it's needed for the next target. Here's where it all comes together into something that will haunt you. Narcissists are emotional vampires, but they don't know they're vampires. They drain the life, energy, and joy out of everyone around them, while genuinely believing they're the ones being victimized. Think about every interaction you have with them. Even the good ones leave you feeling empty somehow, like you just gave a performance instead of having a conversation, like you were interviewed for the role of supporting character in their life story. They suck up attention, validation, emotional labor, and energy with an insatiable hunger that never gets filled because they're trying to fill an infinite void with finite resources from other people. But here's what makes them true vampires. They often can't see their reflection clearly. They genuinely don't understand why people pull away from them, why relationships fail, why they feel so lonely, despite being surrounded by people who supposedly admire them. They create emotional deserts around themselves and then wonder why they're always thirsty. And just like vampires, they can't enter your life without an invitation. The charm, the love bombing, the promises of what could be, that's all designed to get you to invite them in, to lower your defenses, to give them access to your emotional world, to make yourself vulnerable to their hunger. Once you're drained, they move on to fresh sources, leaving behind a trail of people who feel crazy for ever thinking they cared. People who gaslight themselves because surely someone who seemed so wonderful couldn't have been using them the whole time. The vampire metaphor isn't just poetic, it's diagnostic. They literally cannot survive without feeding off others' emotional energy, but they also literally cannot see what they're doing to their victims because their reflection doesn't show in the mirror of self-awareness. Now here's what nobody talks about. Living with someone who has these traits puts you in an invisible cage that's almost impossible to explain to others. Because from the outside, your captor might look successful, charming, even wonderful. They've crafted a public image so carefully that when you try to tell people what life is really like behind closed doors, you sound crazy. You sound bitter. You sound like you're the problem. The cage is built from gaslighting, so subtle, it feels like love. They don't tell you you're wrong. They just look confused when you bring up things they definitely said or did. They don't forbid you from seeing friends. They just get mysteriously sick or create emergencies every time you have plans. They don't directly criticize you. They just make helpful observations about how you could be better, thinner, smarter, more understanding of their needs. Over time, you start to question your own reality. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you do remember things wrong. Maybe the problem really is your expectations, your needs, your inability to appreciate how lucky you are to be with someone so obviously superior. The cage becomes invisible because they've convinced you that you built it yourself out of your own inadequacies. And here's the cruelest part. They often seem genuinely confused by your unhappiness. In their mind, they've given you the gift of their presence, their attention, their love. The fact that you're not grateful just proves how flawed you are, how much work you still need to do on yourself. They become your therapist, your life coach, your guide to becoming worthy of their love. Except the destination keeps moving further away. You can never be good enough, grateful enough, selfless enough to fill the void inside them. And every attempt just teaches you to shrink yourself smaller and smaller until you forget who you were before you met them. Something eventually breaks. It has to. Maybe it's a betrayal so obvious even they can't explain it away. Maybe it's watching them treat your child the way they treat you. Maybe it's just exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness that comes from giving and giving to someone who takes everything and still wants more. The breaking point isn't dramatic like in movies. It's quiet. It's the moment you stop believing their version of reality. Stop accepting their excuses. Stop thinking this is love. And when that happens, when you finally see clearly, the devastation is complete. Because you realize you haven't just lost a relationship. You've lost years of your life, parts of yourself you can't get back, connections with people who tried to warn you but gave up when you defended your captor. The aftermath is complex grief. You're mourning someone who never really existed, the person they pretended to be during the charm phase. You're angry at yourself for not seeing it sooner, for ignoring red flags that seem so obvious in hindsight. You're confused because there were real moments of connection, real shared experiences, real feelings on your side, even if theirs were performance. Recovery means rebuilding, not just your life, but your trust in your own perceptions. Learning that your feelings matter, even when someone else says they don't. Remembering that love shouldn't require you to disappear. Understanding that healthy people don't need you to be smaller for them to feel bigger. But here's what gives me hope, and this is important. People do recover. They rebuild. They learn to recognize these patterns and protect themselves. They find relationships where they can be fully human without apology. The cage was invisible, but once you see its outline, you can never be locked in one again without knowing it, and that knowledge becomes your freedom. Now comes the question that's been lurking in the back of your mind this entire time. What if some of this sounds familiar from the inside? What if you recognize not just someone who hurt you, but yourself? Before you spiral into panic or denial, take a breath. The fact that you're asking the question, that you're capable of self-reflection, that you're concerned about how your behavior affects others, these are actually good signs. True narcissists rarely worry they might be narcissists. But here's the thing about recognizing these traits in yourself. It doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human. We all have narcissistic tendencies. We all have moments of grandiosity, entitlement, or emotional blindness. The difference is in degree, persistence, and the willingness to change. Maybe you've caught yourself seeking attention in unhealthy ways. Maybe you've realized you struggle with empathy more than you thought. Maybe you've seen your own defensiveness, your own blame shifting, your own difficulty with vulnerability. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward freedom from them. Because here's what I've learned about narcissistic traits. They often develop as survival mechanisms. Maybe you learned early that you had to be special to be loved. Maybe you discovered that vulnerability led to pain, so you armored up. Maybe the only way to get attention was to demand it, perform for it, manipulate for it. These strategies might have saved you once, but if they're hurting your relationships now, it's time to evolve beyond them. The path forward isn't about shame or self-flagellation. It's about honest acknowledgement, professional help if needed, and the slow, difficult work of learning healthier ways to get your needs met. It's about developing genuine empathy, practicing real vulnerability, and building relationships based on mutuality rather than extraction. If you've made it here to the end of this video with me, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow us every day for more deep dives into the psychology that shapes our relationships and our lives. Your willingness to examine these difficult topics shows real courage. But let me get back to something crucial. Remember Narcissus staring at his reflection until he wasted away? The real tragedy wasn't that he loved himself too much. It was that he couldn't love anything else at all. He was trapped in a world where only his own image could capture his attention, where nothing beyond himself held any meaning or value. That's the prison of narcissism. Not self-love, but the inability to love anything beyond the self. And here's what haunts me about this ancient story. Narcissus didn't choose his fate. He was cursed by the gods to fall in love with his own reflection. In many ways, that's exactly what narcissism is. A curse that traps people in a hall of mirrors where they can only see themselves reflected endlessly back in distorted shapes that grow more grandiose and more lonely with each iteration. The people trapped in this curse don't wake up choosing to hurt others. They're desperately trying to fill a void that can't be filled, to prove their worth in ways that only diminish it, to find love while being fundamentally unable to give it. And the people who love them, family, friends, partners, become like echo in the myth, reduced to mere reflections of the narcissist's needs until their own voices fade to whispers. But unlike in the ancient story, this curse can be broken. Not easily, not quickly, but it can be broken. Through honest self-reflection, through professional help, through the patient work of learning to see others as complete human beings deserving of love and respect. Through the radical act of stepping away from the mirror and looking out at the world with genuine curiosity about someone other than yourself. Whether you recognized yourself or someone you love in these 10 signs, remember this: awareness is the beginning of change. The mirror doesn't have to be a trap. It can be a tool for growth, for understanding, for becoming more fully human. Subscribe to our channel, share this video with 5 people who need to understand these patterns, and tell me in the comments, what topic should we explore next in this journey of understanding the psychology that shapes our deepest connections? Because the most powerful thing about breaking curses is that once you're free, you can help others find their way out of the maze too.